Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got episode 2 in my series on the evolution of Formula 1. If you missed episode 1 on the 1980s, then I'll link that in the description below. So please catch up on that because it very much leads into today's episode, which is all about Formula 1 in the 1990s. So at the start of this decade, the manufacturers were limited to 3.5 litre engines, but the configuration of these engines wasn't fixed. So we had V8s, like in this Benetton and in this Jordan, both sporting Ford V8s. We had Renault V10s, like in this Williams from 91. And we also had V12s in the Ferraris, who continued with that configuration from the late 80s. In 91, we saw a new star enter the grid. So this was Michael Schumacher's first year, and this is his first Formula 1 car. We saw the emergence of a new dominating team for much of the decade in Williams. So McLaren had dominated in the late 80s. They continued to dominate in 1991, but then in 92 and 93, which is the year this Williams is from, we saw Adrian Newey joined the team, and the Williams was the car to beat. Also in 91, we saw a new point system. So rather than getting 6 points for a win, drivers now got 10 points. In 1992, which is what this lovely footwork is from, we see the introduction of a safety car. So I was surprised at this, but I thought there's always been safety cars in Formula 1, but in fact the safety car wasn't introduced until 92. In 93 we see lots of new technology come into Formula 1. So in this year we see traction control being used, ABS, launch control, even active suspension. But we see things like CVT, which stands for continuously variable transmission. We see that being banned. And we also see the width of the cars being reduced. So back here in 91, 92, these are the really wide, short Formula 1 cars. And I really like that aspect ratio. I think these are some of the coolest looking F1 cars. But from this point, the track of the cars gets narrower and narrower. In 1994, which is the year this Williams is from, and also this Ferrari and this Benetton, all of those electronic driver aids that I just mentioned, all of those are banned, which I personally think is a good thing, because then it becomes a bit more about the driver's talent again. We also see cars start to sport the barge boards at the front of the side pods. So not really seen these previously, but from this point in F1 history, pretty much all cars have some kind of barge boards. We also see mid-race refueling added, which gives a new dimension to the strategy and tactics that the teams use. And again, in an effort to make the sport safer, we see the introduction of a wooden plank to the bottom of the car, which has a wear limit on, and that's to stop the teams running the cars too low. That came after the tragic death of Ayrton Senna, who was driving this car. So this is actually Damon Hill in the driver's seat here, but this is the car Ayrton Senna was driving, and allegedly the car bottomed out at Imola, and that's what sent him off into the barriers at high speed, tragically causing him to lose his life. We see McLaren and Williams domination interrupted with Michael Schumacher in the Benetton. He won in 94 and 95. And in 95, we see another big change in regulations. So new engines have to be designed because the capacity limit reduces from 3.5 to 3 litres. We then see some fairly stable regulations. We see some new engine manufacturers like Yamaha in this Tyrrell. After that brief hiatus, we see Williams coming back to the top of the tree, winning the Drivers and Constructors World Championships in 96 and 97. And then in 98, I think you can just about see it on these cars. So this is the 98 Williams, and you can definitely see it on this one, 98 Jordan. We see the introduction of grooved tyres. This is the FIA trying to reduce mechanical grip and slow the cars down slightly, which wasn't particularly effective, didn't last very long. Again, the cars are reduced in width and are becoming quite narrow looking now. And then in 99, we see flexible wings banned, and that rumbles on to the present day, what constitutes a rigid wing and a flexible wing, because of course everything deforms to some extent under load. But prior to this point, teams could have very flexible wings, and so limits were put in on the deflection of wings from this point forward. And that brings us right up to the turn of the millennia. So in the next episode, episode 3, we'll look at the noughties from 2000 to 2010. But there we have the 1990s. Let me know your experiences of the 1990s Formula 1 seasons in the comments below. I'm interested to hear from people who've been to the races. And I hope you've enjoyed looking at my die-cast models from this era.